Hi everyone, it's Stuart from Naturally English with a question. When leadership changes, culture shifts. But what happens when those shifts ignore the people who built the success? So in today's video, I'm touching on a challenge that many companies face, especially during leadership transitions. High turnover, unclear communication, and a loss of trust. So if you're a manager managing managers, or a leader that's navigating some change, then I think this one's for you. So let's begin with some hard truths, the kind of truths that don't always make it into the boardroom quarterly reports. A Gallup poll showed that 70% of employee engagement is directly linked to the relationship with their immediate manager. That means that leadership isn't just about vision, controlling, or managing, it's about connection. Replacing a manager can cost up to 200% of their annual salary if you're factoring in recruitment costs, onboarding, lost productivity, and team disruption. That's a huge yet avoidable cost to any company. In many retail and service industries, managerial turnover has risen sharply, not because of external competition, but because of internal mismanagement. And here's the kicker. In some companies, including one that I know quite well, the reputation has deteriorated to the point where external candidates are no longer interested in applying. The vacancies just aren't attractive anymore. So what happens? The gaps are filled internally, and not necessarily through a structured process, but out of necessity. Staff, junior managers are promoted, often temporarily, without proper training, mentorship, or support. If they perform, they stay. If they struggle, they go. It's survival of the fittest. Now, self-drive and initiative are obviously important. There's no question about that. But mentorship, support, and a clearly documented path to that success are what turn potential into performance. And without that, promotions become pressure points and leadership becomes a revolving door. This isn't just inefficient, it's damaging. It's damaging to morale, to reputation, and to the brand. And in business English, we call this reactive succession, a short-term fix that undermines long-term stability. So yeah, the risk of rapid promotion without preparation. I've seen this firsthand. In my previous role, I worked within a clearly defined, extremely hierarchical management structure, from global head offices to country managers to area managers to store managers to HR managers to managers. There was a lot of managers. But back then, there was a clear training program and everyone fitted into that structure. And I didn't just receive training, I was lucky enough to deliver the training. Managers were prepared, they were supported, and they were developed before stepping into leadership roles. And today, in many organizations, that structure still exists on paper. But the process has changed. Promotions are often reactive, driven by unfilled vacancies rather than readiness. Staff or junior managers are elevated quickly, sometimes without the necessary training or mentoring, and they're expected to perform immediately. This isn't strategic succession planning, that's gap filling. And when these newly promoted managers are struggling, there's nowhere to turn to, and they're quietly removed. There's no support, there's no second chance. Just the message, you weren't ready. What does that do to a person's confidence? What does that do to their professional identity? It creates a culture of disposability, a revolving door of talent, and it undermines the very foundation of leadership development. In business English, we refer to this as role inflation without capability alignment. It's basically a mismatch between title and training, and it's one of the fastest ways to erode trust and performance. Empathetic leadership is strategic. It isn't soft. It's a strategic asset. And a real world example is at Bristlecone, that's a supply chain firm. Empathetic leadership training reduced attrition by 15% and doubled employee satisfaction scores. Empathy means asking, what's going on, before we react. It means redistributing tasks when someone's struggling and not punishing them for it. In business English, we call this people first leadership. That's a style that prioritizes emotional intelligence, active listening, and psychological safety. Here in the Netherlands, in Dutch business culture, directness is often seen as a strength, clear, concise, and to the point. But when Dutch professionals communicate with international colleagues, especially in English, that same directness can be misinterpreted as bluntness or even sometimes rudeness. And this is where intercultural communication becomes essential. Business English isn't just about vocabulary, it's about tone, nuance, and cultural awareness. For example, English speakers from the UK or North America may expect more diplomatic phrasing, indirect feedback, or layered politeness. And without training, these differences can lead to misunderstandings, tension, and lost opportunities. And here's something that I say quite often. Many countries speak English extremely well, but what they may actually be doing is speaking their mother language using English words. That's the heart of intercultural communication. It's not just about language proficiency, it's about cultural translation, it's about understanding how your message is going to be received and not just how it's delivered. Take IBM, for example. When they expanded into Asia and Latin America, they didn't just translate the documents, they invested in cultural intelligence and language training. What was the result? Stronger client relationships, smoother internal collaboration, and fewer communication breakdowns. The same principles apply here in the Netherlands. Whether you're working with international clients, colleagues, or suppliers, understanding how your communication style is perceived by those people and adapting it, that is the key. In business English, we call this cross-cultural fluency. That's the ability to shift tone, structure, and expectations depending on your audience. And that's a skill that I can train in both Dutch and in English. Help professionals communicate with clarity and confidence across many borders. Institutional knowledge is gold. So new leaders come in and new leaders can often bulldoze what came before, but success is built on continuity. For example, PepsiCo under Indri Nooyi retained legacy systems while introducing performance with purpose. That was blending innovation with a lot of respect for the past. And in business English, this is called strategic succession planning. That's the art of building forward without forgetting about and erasing what worked in the past. Feedback is a gift, it's not a weapon. In theory, employee satisfaction surveys are designed to give leadership insight into morale, engagement, and areas for improvement, but in practice, they're often misused. When participation rates become KPIs, the message shifts from "we care about your opinion" to "we need you to tick a box." And I've seen this firsthand as well. Store managers are pressured to increase response rates rather than improving the conditions. Why is your store only at 59%? You need to do better. And that's not feedback. That's performance pressure disguised as engagement. Real feedback culture means voluntary participation, anonymous responses, an actionable follow-up, and leadership that listens. I'm not just there to write reports. Companies like HubSpot and Salesforce, they've shifted to continuous feedback loops, short, regular check-ins rather than annual surveys. And this builds trust and it gives managers real-time insight into team dynamics. If you're facing high turnover, ask yourself this. Are we empowering managers or are we just directing them? Are we communicating clearly across cultures? Are we supporting mental health with action or just paperwork? Here are some real world solutions that work. Leadership development programs, like at Bristlecone, they use the engagement report cards, not to punish, but to identify early warning signs, and that allows problems to be fixed before they can escalate. And this proactive approach is what real leadership looks like. Intercultural communication training, Ubisoft and Gucci used Taylor cultural workshops to improve collaboration and customer experience across their regions. And these programs helped teams understand not just the language, but the tone, hierarchy, and expectations. Burnout prevention initiatives. For example, Starbucks introduced mental health benefits and flexible scheduling, and smaller consultancies use regular check ins and workload balancing to reduce burnout and to boost morale. In business English, these are examples of resilience architecture. Systems designed to support people and not just the processes. Leadership will always evolve, but if it evolves without honouring the people who built the foundation, it risks losing the very culture that made it strong. At Naturally English, I can help teams and leaders improve communication confidently, clearly, and culturally aware. So, whether you're navigating leadership change, you're managing managers, or you're rebuilding trust, I can offer training in English, but also in Dutch if necessary, to help you speak with clarity, confidence, and impact. Let's build leadership that listens.